Good evening, everyone. My name is Irene Beckett. I'm here on behalf of the American Coptic Council. Today, we are here with Ron Castorina Jr., who is running for a judicial position on Staten Island. I will let him give you the details on that. Ron, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you very much, President Beckett. If I may, Irene, also a good friend. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and to speak about my passion, which is running for this seat for civil court. And I can't wait to dive in with you.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to just get into it. Ron, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for the last 15 years. I'm a former New York State Assemblyman. I represented the South Shore of Staten Island in the 62nd Assembly District. And I was a former commissioner of the New York City Board of Elections for Staten Island. I've been a Staten Islander for the last 20 years. I grew up in Brooklyn, but I like to say to my Staten Island native friends, I like to tell them, but I chose to live here. I chose to be here and to practice and have my business here. I have a law practice, which I've had consistently since 2006. My office is in Tottenville, where I live. I was a law clerk for a couple of years when I graduated law school. I worked for Judge Joseph Maltese. I worked for Judge Matthew Sciarrino, and I also worked for Judge Bruce Balter in Brooklyn. So I've spent a lot of time in the court system, and I'm very familiar with it. And I've also spent my entire career, even when I was working as a commissioner and even when I was working in the state assembly, I still maintained and operated my law practice for that entire time. So I've been consistently in practice, enjoying my ability to reach out and to help and to service the community, not only in public life, but also as an attorney. And public service is my passion, and I look forward to talking more about it with you.
Okay, terrific. Can you tell us about what specific qualities make you ready for a career on the bench?
I think that there are 4 or 5 different qualities that you should have to be a judicial candidate and to be a judge. One of the things that I think is important is the notion of judicial intelligence. And what does that mean? That's knowledge of the law, real-time knowledge of the law, being up to date on the law as the law evolves and changes, and also being able to apply the law. Now, that knowledge is something that I've developed over the course of my 15 years, as an attorney in practice, and also as a law clerk, where I worked in the criminal courts of the city of New York, the Supreme Court of the state of New York in Brooklyn as well. And during that time, I had the privilege to serve the court system, to serve judges that I worked for in drafting hundreds of decisions. Okay, I drafted criminal decisions and I drafted civil decisions. And why that's important and why I bring up the criminal court background that I have is because the little known fact about this seat is that if you're elected to civil court, there is a possibility that the court system, that OCA, the Office of Court Administration, can place you in criminal court, where you could be seated as a criminal court judge, although you've been elected as a civil court judge. So I have the unique ability to have served in both the civil term of the Supreme Court and the criminal court of the city of New York. So I have a great understanding of the court system, of drafting decisions. I have knowledge of the law in both of those areas. And I've also had the ability to serve the public as an attorney So I've been on both sides. I've been in the court system and I've also been in private practice. So I think that that enables me to have a very interesting perspective of it all. And that knowledge is one of the factors that I think will make me a good judge and what makes me a good candidate. The second thing would be judicial integrity. And integrity in and of itself is important. You want to know that your candidate is somebody that you can trust, is somebody that is just, is somebody that believes in public service. I have lived a life of public service. Public service not only in elective office as a state assemblyman, but as appointed by the city council to become a commissioner of the Board of Elections. But I've also been a leader in my community, not just in those posts, but through Rotary, through Kiwanis, through the Italian Historical Society of America, through the Richmond County Bar Association, where I previously served as a director and was published in the Law Journal. These are some of the qualities that I think that you can extrapolate integrity from. And service is one of those major, major points that I think is important. It's not just service now because I'm running, it's service throughout my whole life. And it's that kind of service that you can go back in time and you can see all of the things that I've done. And I hope that everyone watching will get to learn more about me as the campaign goes on. The third thing would be what I call judicial wisdom. And what is that? Judicial wisdom to me is having a practical sense of knowing how to deal with people and knowing how to work things out so that people who come to the court, the civil court is the people's court. And, you're going to deal with issues regarding, basic contracts and some property disputes and credit card company disputes with folks. And to be able to kind of sift through some of the very difficult fact patterns that because people don't necessarily think like lawyers all the time. They certainly lay folks are going to just be very open in, telling the story. And I have a very great knack for just digging through and pulling out the relevant and pertinent facts and then helping folks come to consensus. So I think that practical wisdom, if you will, is something that I think is going to be beneficial for me if I'm elected to the bench. The next thing I would say is you have to have a desire for justice. There has to be a passion for it. It can't just be a job. Being a judge is not just a job. To me, it's a calling. It's almost as if, let me put it this way, you have to have deep in your heart a sense that you want to serve the public and you want to devote yourself to the notion of justice and what justice is. And I have that passion for seeking out justice. I've done it my whole life. I've fought for justice for people pro bono in many, many instances throughout my career, even in the federal court. If you look back into the history of my pro bono service, you'll see that back in, I believe, 2008, 2010, when the city was going to take away yellow school bus service away from 7th and 8th graders, I stepped in pro bono. I represented our entire city council delegation on Staten Island, and we sued the mayor in the city of New York, and we were successful in getting city bus service reinstituted. Later, it became law with the help of Assemblyman Cusick and State Senator Andrew Lanza. Later on, when there was a vacancy in our congressional seat, and there was no chance in sight, at least we didn't believe there was any chance in sight, that there would be an election called until November, and this was back in about February of that year, I saw a problem, and I spoke with members of my community. I was not yet an elected official, but I recognized that we, Staten Islanders and portions of Brooklyn, nearly 750,000 people, would not have a voice in Congress. And so I brought pro bono case in federal court against the governor, and essentially we made law nationwide, and essentially what the result was that the governor was compelled to call for a special election, and that election was held on May 5th in that year. So I've always looked to help people. I believe very deeply in notions of justice and fair play, and I know right from wrong. Those are what I think are some of the qualities. I mean, I can certainly go on, but I for the sake of brevity, I'll wrap that up right there. But there are a variety of characteristics that I think would make are important for a judge, and I think I have many of those characteristics, and I think that would make me a good member of the bench and a good and humble public servant.
That was great. Thank you very much. What are some of the administrative issues you faced while practicing as an attorney that you would want to change if elected to the bench?
Some of the administrative issues, well, first I want to say that in the last 20 years, there have been a lot of great changes within the court system that I think have probably been more beneficial than what we've seen in the last 100 years. So, we've gotten e-courts, and we've done a lot of moving into the future with the court system that I think has been beneficial, not only to the attorneys, but the litigants and really court staff and everybody involved. So I want to, give kudos to the court system and the state legislature, in fact, for assisting in having that come to pass. That being said, you're always going to have issues with cases that take a long time and discovery matters that just go on and on. I believe in efficiency. I believe in being on top of cases. And so frankly, I would look to streamline cases, make sure that we get to hear them regularly, make sure that we keep an eye on cases and not allow matters to be adjourned and adjourned and adjourned without good cause. Now, as a practicing attorney, I also believe that every case is different and unique. And just like in civil supreme, a matrimonial case is not the same as a car accident case. You have to look at and identify the issues in every case to determine whether or not it should be going on as long as it is. Some of the other things would be, well, right now, and looking at it in terms of being as a topical issue, I know that the COVID-19 situation is going to have and it has had, a major impact on the court system. So I know how to deal with new and different things. I'm not stuck in a mold. I'm able to think on my feet, and I'm able to move with the times and to do the things that need to be done to effectively administer justice, which is the role of a judge, under the guise of new and different factors that are being presented, particularly with COVID-19 at the fore. So those are a couple of things: efficiencies, cutting down on paper. I mean, these are more administrative things. I wouldn't have any, opportunity to amend or change those rules as a member of the bench in civil court. But certainly, I also believe in kindness and courtesy and consideration to everyone: the litigants, the attorneys, court staff, court officers. I think it's critical to treat people the right way. And I have a history, and you can speak with any of my staff, going back to the beginning of my law practice and all of the people that I've dealt with, even when I was in the court system. I have very long friendships and great relationships. And I think that is in part because of the way that I treat people. And I'm very conscious of the impact that you have on other people and how you treat them and how you talk to them. And I think it's critical that a judge maintain a certain temperament that is even keel, and that you always make sure, not just that you're impartial, that's par for the course. You know you must be impartial as a judge, but you must also give off the perception of impartiality. The public has to look at you on the bench and believe that when they get their shot, when they get up to the bench, when they get into the well, that they're going to get a fair shake. And that's something that I will always endeavor to make true, and to let people have that sense of feeling that they're going to get their fair shake, they're going to be heard, and that justice will be administered in an appropriate fashion.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ron. Do you have any ideas that you would put in place to increase court efficiency and procedures? Now, I know you touched upon that before, but if there's anything else that you would like to add.
Well, I think, certainly the Office of Court Administration, for the viewers that aren't familiar with the term, we use OCA all the time, right? OCA kind of sets the tone, and we have standards and goals, and there are procedures that are in place and that we must follow. So from a practical standpoint, I would make sure that I endeavored to always make sure that we were up to par with our standards and goals, to make sure that decisions were handed down as quickly and efficiently as possible. People shouldn't have to wait long to get a decision. People shouldn't have to wait forever to get from the filing of a summons and a complaint to trial. So I would do everything that I could to comply with the rules provided for by OCA, but I would also engage in that type of conduct that I was just discussing with you about, being kind and courteous in the courtroom. I believe that goes a long way in handling matters, and just moving things along swiftly. And I have the knack for doing that. I have the knowledge, I have the energy, and I have the passion for getting that done. So I think I could be effective in streamlining efficiencies and doing it with a smile.
Okay, thank you. How has your involvement in the community prepared you for a position on the bench?
I think it's been indispensable. In fact, I've spent the last 7 years or so, theoretically, in public life from the time that I was commissioner of the Board of Elections. As commissioner, I was in charge of handling employees and employee disputes, conducting hearings regarding employment, conducting all sorts of hearings regarding issues regarding elections and so on. And then, of course, my time in the Assembly, where my job was to help people. I was a lawmaker. So here I'm looking to take the experience that I've had as an administrator, essentially as a commissioner, and as a lawmaker, someone who participated in drafting of laws, proposing laws, and bringing that experience and elevating it to a different level. I look at going to the bench as the pinnacle of my career, and I look at it as the beginning of what I believe would hopefully be a very long career, in where I'd be fully devoted to the bench and to the public. All of the interactions that I've had as a member of the Assembly, not just with my colleagues, but with the public. I mean, my office was known for helping people. We didn't turn anyone away. If you had a federal issue, we'll help you. If you had a state or a city issue, we'll help you. We didn't turn folks away. And one of the reasons why I think that is helpful is that I had experience in so many different ways in dealing with so many different issues, from very personal issues to just the mundane in terms of sidewalk violations and things like that. I was able to relate to folks, understand the plight of folks, and I think having had those experiences, it'll enable me to be a better judge. It'll enable me to be more reflective on the issues that are before me, because I can understand and relate to the public in a way that a lot of people can't. They have not had that type of worldly experience. In addition to that, my experience as an attorney, which I've had a very busy law practice. I've been, despite the fact that I've been a member of the assembly, and despite the fact that I've served as a commissioner and the Board of Elections, I carried a full load of cases in my law practice during all that time. So all of that together, I think, is what will make me a good judge. And I think that I'm at a point in my life and in my career that I want to elevate, and I want to get to that next level of public service. Because for me, the most humbling thing that you can do is serve another, okay? And to give of yourself in service. And what better way to serve than to serve the public? People you don't know, people, some, of course, friends and family, but many at large that you don't know and you've never met. But to give of yourself, of the talents that are given to you by God, and to be there for the public, and to represent and promulgate those notions of justice, to me, there can't be any better job than that. And that's why I'm a candidate.
Okay, thank you. That basically concludes our questions, but I want to end by asking you, is there anything else that you would like to tell our viewers today before we conclude the interview?
Well, yes, I'd say this. I hope that you'll continue to be involved and engaged. I think it's critical for the public to be involved in, I know that the civil court seat is not as exciting maybe as president or Congress. I get that, but it's important nonetheless. It's a 10-year term, and the person you elect will be on the bench for at least 10 years. And so I want you to get to know me. Many of you do know me. I have a very long history with the American Coptic Council and Coptic Christians all across Staten Island. But check out my Facebook site, Castorina for Judge, my website. If you want to speak to me and you have questions and you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. I'm happy to respond, and I'm very open about these things. But I look forward to seeing folks on the campaign trail. I know it'll be a very different trail, maybe a virtual trail, but we'll get it done. And I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible as we proceed.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time. We know this has certainly been a different mode of doing things, but we appreciate you coming on. And I'm sure that if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to you directly. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.